Drum roll, please. It's my honor to introduce to you our legal counsel. He's been with us for well over a year, and we call on him quite often, and he is always so kind. He replies immediately, and we've had a great working relationship, and we're very proud to have him working with us and on our side. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Ted Warpinski.
All right, get right in there. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank Dale and Leah Jane for all their hard work. They're running around here crazy, and everybody should give them a round of applause. Well, I've got a few notes just so I don't miss anything, so bear with me. I mean, everybody here, this is a great turnout. I'm sure Dale and Leah Jane are happy to see all this. I am too. It's great. We need a lot of volunteers and a lot of support to try to take on this kind of an effort. And so you should just give yourself a round of applause as well, because without you, you wouldn't be here. We're all stronger when we're working together. So give yourself applause. I just want to personally shout out to my wife over here who accompanied me on this over here. My wife Kelly, if you see her, you'll see how lucky I am. Thank you, Kelly. So what I want to do is really just kind of tell you a little bit about, first just about who I am, what sort of my background, and then what we've been doing and what we are hoping to do on behalf of the coalition in regards to the Back 40 Mine project. So Dale's right, he contacted me about a year and a half ago looking to see if I would be interested in kind of getting into this fight on behalf of those that might be affected by the mine project. And when he explained it to me, I mean, it was a very compelling just story on its own. I mean, here you've got this mine going in Michigan. You know, Dale, he's in Wisconsin. He's concerned about all the people in Wisconsin don't have a voice in this process, perhaps. And, you know, would I be interested in looking at it, looking into it? And so, you know, of course, I was interested in looking into it and learning more about it. And I came up here probably about a year and a half ago, like I'm saying, and met with a group, probably a group of about 20 or 30 people over at UW Marinette, and heard a lot more detail and heard about the history of the opposition actually that had been going on here. And a lot of great ideas, a lot of great issues being thrown out from people on all aspects of this mine, about the problems, about issues, more than we can ever hope to really tackle, because you can't take on everything. You got to focus your efforts. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through it. But I was impressed by the commitment and the desire to really join together and try to gather the disparate voices, all the different groups that are coming together to try to take on this project. So let me just step back. I'll tell you just a little bit about my history. I've been practicing environmental law for my entire career. I graduated in 1987 from Marquette Law School. I grew up in Green Bay, moved down to Milwaukee to go to law school down there. So I'm not unfamiliar with this area, having grown up in Green Bay. If you're ever down there, you'll probably run into a Warpinski, because there's a fair number of us in the Green Bay area. So I started off, though, earlier on in my career, actually kind of working on the other side of some of these kinds of things. And that's how you learn, okay? I started off because I worked at a firm. You know, we were involved in the early years of environmental law, helping companies do permits and things like that. And so I learned about the process about that thing. And about probably 10 years into my career, I started to get the opportunity to kind of represent private parties who had been injured by environmental pollution projects. And that's really where I think sort of in my own sense really got to do what I like to do, which is represent parties who have been affected or who are potentially affected by environmental issues. And I actually met my wife in that context as well. Her mother had a contaminated well from a gas station, and I represented her mother's estate in a case. But from that, I've represented private parties. I've represented people affected by quarry blasting, by pesticide spraying, by manure spraying, all sorts of different things that can have an impact. And I've been involved in other wetlands projects. I helped a group try to stop an airport expansion that was going to go through a wetland area in West Bend. And I also then kind of helped another group try to stop a landfill expansion down in Kenosha that was going to infringe upon their property. So there's a different history, but over the course of 30 years, you know, I've learned sort of a little bit about how do you want to try to take on these projects, because you can't, like I said, you can't take on every issue. There's too many out there. You have to learn, you have to focus your efforts on what are the more significant issues. And here, as everybody knows, there are a lot of significant issues, and there are a lot of things that have gone on that set the stage well for a challenge at this point. This starts off with the fact that this is the boundary water. The Menominee River, as everybody knows here, it's the boundary between Michigan and Wisconsin, and uniquely, Michigan is one of the 2 states in the country that has authority from the federal government to issue Clean Water Act permits in their state. And so it creates a real key legal issue, is whether or not that sort of authority can even be delegated when it has to do with a boundary water such as the Menominee River. That's an issue, as many of you know, the Menominee tribe is fighting in federal court. We've been watching that case very closely in terms of how it might impact what we've been doing. We've talked to the tribal legal team about it all, and are ready to sort of jump in and help them out if we can at some point, if it makes sense to do that. That's an area that's central, we believe, even to the challenge at the administrative level to challenge this permit. And so that's a key issue, obviously, is the delegation of authority to Michigan, and how does that play here in this particular context? The other thing that we noticed, and this was sort of as we're going through the permitting review, and all of you know this because I know everybody showed up at the public informational meetings. But when Michigan DEQ decided that the application was complete for this wetlands permit, that to me and not 2 weeks later they're coming out and saying, oh, but we need a bunch more information from you, okay? It was a huge disconnect. How can you start off a project by saying, the application's complete, let's have a public hearing on it so everybody can learn all about this issue, all the issues affected here. At the same time, the regulators had really had no answers to some of the key central questions. Yet they put this out for public comment expecting to get meaningful feedback. Well, the feedback that they got was, nobody wants this, and you've all heard the term social license out there. There is no social license for this particular mine project. That was made loud and clear. But beyond the social license issue, its key here is, have they evaluated, even remotely, all the potential impacts of this project that it could have on both sides of the river? And it was very clear from the technical comments that were submitted by some of the great scientists that had been retained by different groups throughout here, from a wetlands issue, from mining issues, from hydrology and hydrogeology, lots of great technical comments, but most of them focusing on the things that nobody knew the answers to, which is the job of the mine to come in and say, they're supposed to lay that all out and provide that information, and here it was glaring that it was all missing, that nobody knew the answers to these questions. At the time they're saying the application's complete. That should have been the first reason, that was another big red flag for this project. Then you get to the point where we have EPA. Okay, I already talked about the delegation of authority that the federal government gave to Michigan. Well, EPA still has a role there where they have an oversight role, where they have an opportunity to comment and to object to a permit. Well, here they did that. They also had significant objections that they provided after the comment period for this project ran. Another set of significant comments, all that stuff was packaged by Michigan DEQ, sent back to Aquila to say, answer all these questions, address these comments. That's it. We're talking now March of 2018 at this point. Okay, March, April, May, they never were able to address these significant comments that were submitted both by EPA, by the technical folks that had reviewed this project. So that's another huge red flag. We have no answers. Another one, when you got the Michigan Water Resources Division from the MDEQ coming in. These are the staff people that are dealing day to day with Aquila trying to get this mine permit. The same people who said the application was complete, by the way, who are now saying, well, we've concluded. They've issued a findings of fact, conclusions of law, and you probably heard all about this a little bit, but they issued significant findings that go to the heart of what you're supposed to prove when you are trying to get a permit. And that is, had they shown that this would not cause harm, that it wasn't capable of causing harm to the environment. And the answer to that question by the staff people at Michigan was no, they had not done that. And they went through tens of pages of comments pointing out specific criteria of what the regulations say, what the statutes say, and how Aquila had failed to address those issues. So everybody thought when that came out, well, great, this project may stop. Well, no, it did not, as you all know. What happened was the bureaucrats within the Department of Environmental Quality said, well, what would it take to address your concerns to the staff? So this basically said, can you draft a set of conditions that if they're all met would address all of your concerns? So staff, I mean, this is their job, they draft 20 pages of conditions that if all of these things were met, well then their concerns would be met. Okay, that sounds, it sounds good on its face, right? Well, the answer is no, because all of these things are things that are supposed to be proven before you get a permit, not after you get a permit. Yet, at the same time, EPA has objected to this permit. So what happens? Michigan goes to the EPA and says, hey, if we put these conditions in, will you withdraw your objections? And EPA says, well, if you're okay with that, we're okay with that, basically is how it worked. They said, if you do it, we'll withdraw our objections. June 4th, everything happened, the permit was issued. So that's where we are in the process. That starts the next stage in the process, okay? You all did a wonderful job trying to stop this thing before the permit was issued. And a great record has been assembled that can be used to try to continue this fight at the next stage. The next stage is the contested case process that Dale alluded to. And we have filed a petition for a contested case. The Menominee tribe has also filed a petition, and Tom Borner, who's a local resident, I'm not sure if Tom's here today or not, but he's a resident from up in from Michigan side, who's been very active fighting this thing. He challenged the mine permit itself along with the tribe, and I know they went through a huge contested case proceeding themselves. So there are 3 petitions. They likely will all be consolidated together into one action. So we will be working as close as we can with the tribe and with Mr. Borner to try to present what we believe are the right way to argue this thing, the right way to present it, okay? And what we're going to focus on is the delegation of authority. There's a lot of stuff in the record that wasn't there when the tribe filed its lawsuit. And even the Michigan staff comments and the conditions, one of them specifically talks about proving that there will be no harm to the waters of Wisconsin, to the groundwaters and affect either side of the river, which is a key issue in my view in terms of whether the delegation of authority should be effective here when you clearly have an impact that could potentially affect both sides of the border. So we're going to try to focus and try to make some hay with that, okay, in the contested case process. But we're also going to challenge, like I talked about, and focus on just deeming the application complete, thinking that it was all complete, and then having a public hearing, and then having it be obvious that it's not complete, and allowing them to keep supplementing the record. At some point, that line that needs to stop, and you have to say you've either proven it or you haven't proven it. They want to keep sort of moving the ball. We're going to want to focus on them deeming the application complete and kind of what did that mean? How did that affect the role, the public participation, the ability for people to comment and review the impacts of this project? And then we're going to focus on the decision to use these conditions, to try to employ conditions to get by the requirements of the regulations by using conditions and basically saying you can prove it all later. Because it raises significant questions as to what role is there for review by people of that process? Is it fair to have people continue to have to monitor everything when it's their burden in the first instance to prove these things? So those are the three major issues that we're going to sort of focus on. There's going to be a lot of nuances within that. Obviously, the entire decision by the Water Resources Division, the staff people at MDEQ, and what they pointed out are all things that we're going to point out, and we're going to rely a lot upon that, and upon the experts that have been already been working on this project. So, I think we believe we've got a really great grounds at this point, that the stage has been set for a challenge. Being that I'm a Wisconsin and I'm licensed to practice law in Wisconsin, one thing we needed to have somebody licensed in Michigan who could help us get into Michigan courts, because you have to be admitted in Michigan in order to file a contested case. So we talked around, asked around a lot of people about who might be good, and we came across a gentleman by the name of Bruce Wallace, who's in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Some people may have heard Bruce's name before. He was involved on behalf of the National Wildlife Federation and some other groups with regards to the Eagle Mine project. And I know he spent a lot of time. They thought they had won that one a little bit, and then got a setback at the review level themselves. And so he's would like to get a success here as well, because he understands the dangers of sulfide mining very clearly, and something that we think will be a very great benefit to us. He's got great connections. He's well regarded, and somebody that we think is going to help us when we need it at the local level in Michigan to make these challenges. So the next steps right now are really, we're just sort of waiting for Michigan to acknowledge everything that's been filed, to set probably a scheduling hearing at some point to talk about how this contested case is going to proceed. And then we can, we'll be obviously in touch with Dale in regards to how that plays out. We will continue to monitor the Menominee tribe's lawsuit. Let me just talk a little bit about that too, because some people may be interested in kind of where that sits if you haven't heard anything. But there was an argument actually in federal court a couple weeks ago, I think it was, and because the EPA had moved to dismiss the action, claiming that, because they made two claims. One was that it was a violation of the Clean Water Act to make the delegation, and one that it was under the Administrative Procedure Act, they can seek a review of that decision. So there's two legal theories. I don't want to get too bogged down into the weeds here, but EPA had moved to dismiss them both. And on the Clean Water Act claim, there's some tough issues there, and they may end up not being able to proceed with that Clean Water Act violation claim. But on the Administrative Procedure Act claim, the issue there was because the delegation to Michigan took place in 1984, and of course the argument by EPA was, well, if you wanted to challenge that, you should have challenged it within 6 years of 1984. And of course nobody knows that there's going to be a mine going in, at that time, so why would anybody challenge it? And so our sense was that the court was kind of understanding that. But he did allow for some further briefing, and it's on this issue of what waters the Army Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction over. Have you ever heard of the term waters of the United States? And all those kind of things, they're out in the news. The current administration has been doing a lot to try to change some of the definitions of what waters of the United States are. So there's some significant legal issues here that could wind their way up quite high into the legal process. But the court there in Green Bay is going to be hearing those issues a little bit, in fact, seeing how they factor into his decision on the delegation of authority issue. But like I said, I think there's been a lot of stuff developed in the record with regards to the impacts and potential impacts that could go a long way towards assisting in that fight as well. So that's kind of where we're at, and we look forward to continuing to wage the fight as best we can. And we think, like I said, there's a lot of great issues that you've presented us with, and there's been a lot of great groundwork done. And our job is going to be to carry the ball the next step. And with that, Dale, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, we got the update on where we are legally. and we continue to be in the fundraising mode. So it isn't unusual at this stage of the game. This is where we're at. When Leah Jane and I got into this a year and a half ago, it was basically our perception at the time that this wasn't going to be an easy task. It was going to take some time, take a lot of effort, and it's going to take a lot of fundraising. And with your help, ladies and gentlemen, we're able to pursue this.